Okay, we are live. Welcome, folks. All right, folks. Welcome to another edition of Ben's Big Deals. I am really excited today because I'm going to bring to you someone, as someone who teaches for a living, travel, insurance, speaking, I've learned that how you say something matters often more than what you actually say. And I think about these things, when I think about these things, I think about growing up, my mom would say, talk like those people on television. Like my mom was an immigrant. And when she came here, a lot of times she would learn, Miss Universe or Miss Thailand, Miss Universe. She learned it from watching Sesame Street. So there's so many things that we can learn from those who talk professionally, like the people on television. And we have some of those folks right with us today. They speak in a calm, a clear, a measured cadence, and it stuck with me today. And so today I wanted to bring these two people who I feel have mastered the art of speaking on a world-class level. And I want to introduce you Mark Albert, who is a Peabody-winning award journalist. And he's been 25 years for Hearst. And, you may have seen him on the lawns of the White House. And then we also have John Bates, who's a TEDx speaker, trainer, a NASA trainer, mindset whisperer for high stakes communicator. So I want to welcome you both to this session. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Ben.
Yeah, glad to be here, Ben.
I wanted to ask you, maybe we'll start off with Mark. Mark, you've been a reporter for many years. When you're on air live, bringing people both tragedy and triumph, how do you hold space with your voice? Do you speak differently when you deliver good news versus bad news? I want to kind of get into a little bit about what does a reporter think and how do they come across when they're communicating these things?
And today we're celebrating America's 250th birthday. And unfortunately, 4 Marines were killed overseas tonight in an action in Yemen, right? And so you're going to speak in a higher octave and a higher tone of voice when it's something more celebratory. And of course, when it's more somber, you're going to lower your voice, just like we do in real life when we talk to our friends and our loved ones. So you're right that voice, intonation, cadence, tempo, that's all super key on television, but also in John's world, in speaking, whether you're on the TEDx stage or somewhere else. Voice, cadence, intonation, pacing, those are your secret weapons, right? That you can use to influence how people are perceiving your story, making sure they are connecting with you, and making sure that you are resonating with the audience, whether it's on television or on a stage.
That's awesome. Mark, when we think about these type of things, I think one of the things that we're concerned about is how are we going to be perceived? I think that's when most of us get started, we're concerned too much about ourselves and maybe not necessarily the message. When you deliver it now, Mark, do you go through those things, or is it kind of natural now how you communicate and how you speak to people on television?
Oh my gosh, is my hair okay? Well, this shirt, is the shirt too white? Maybe the shirt should be blue. Should I have worn this blazer? Maybe I know John's got a polo shirt. Maybe I should have done a blue blazer instead. Oh my gosh, what are they going to think of me on LinkedIn? Did I put makeup on? Is this lighting okay? This is an exercise John does to try and banish some of those thoughts in your head. John, do you want to talk a little bit about how do you deal with that, whether it's on stage or on TV, those thoughts that come in that oh my gosh.
Well, it's a huge issue, Ben. And even for people like, Les Brown, who's one of the most highly paid, highly requested public speakers of all time. He told me years ago that before he goes out on stage, he stuffs his suit full of paper towels, because if he didn't, his suit would be drenched in sweat by the time he got out on stage. Right. So he stuffs it full of paper towels to soak up the sweat. And then when he hears them winding up his introduction and he's saying, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, he starts pulling out the paper towels, and then he runs out on stage, Les Brown. And then a couple minutes into it, he's fine. But, it's never about fearless. It's always about courage, because, getting noticed by the group is dangerous. And so one of the things that I do that Mark's referring to is I do an exercise where I go through and I just name some of the things that monkey mind, crazy roommate of mine is saying. So this audience is never going to listen. They're not going to like it. They're going to judge me. They're, they want to be somewhere else. And I'm not, I'm a fraud. If they only knew, I'm too fat, I'm too old, whatever. And I say that stuff out loud so I can get it out of the driver's seat, and I put it in the back seat. And then I create something that's going to inspire me before I walk out on stage. And Ben, I'll usually do this the night before an event and then keep reminding myself of it. So, when I walk out on stage, typically what I create is that the audience, they are interested, they're courageous, and they're out to make a difference. And they're already great communicators. So we're just taking them to the next level. And then who I am, instead of being that, that fraud and that, I don't deserve to be here and too old and too whatever, I walk out and I'm the drill instructor for your greatness, playful mastery, and over there in your world. And I just live like that's how it is, right? And then the big secret with that exercise is to hang in there, because it gets very tempting to go back to what the monkey's saying. But the saying that really helps me pull all that together is from a guy named Snoop Doggy Dogg. No kidding. He says, "Don't be nervous. Be at their service." And that's fundamentally what I think that exercise is doing, is getting me out of my own head, worried about what other people think of me, because really that's not why I'm there. And it gets me over there in their world and interested in them and the message that I'm there to convey and the difference that I'm there to make and all of that. And then I just call the nervous feeling excited, and it's way more fun. So
I was channeling my inner John Bates, Ben, when I started that answer. He does that so effectively at our live events.
That is awesome. John, I know for a lot of people, when they hear this thing about how you train NASA astronauts, NASA astronauts are literally rocket scientists. Literally. And they are probably some of the most accomplished people in the world. When you have to sit down with them and train them on how to speak, what is their biggest challenge that they face that you have to help them overcome?
Well, when I originally started working with NASA, two of the women that worked with the manned spaceflight program parts of NASA, they came to me after I had done a storytelling workshop for Johnson & Johnson Innovation Labs. And they came up to me afterwards and they said, "John, we really need your help at NASA, because we work with manned spaceflight. And if we can't make what we do sound interesting, we don't think we deserve to be doing it. Will you help us, tell our stories?" So one of the things that is a very astronaut problem that I think is a very human problem really is that, the astronauts, they said, "Well, John, we don't want to talk about ourselves. Like, it's not about us. It's about the taxpayers that make what we do possible." Right. And I was like, okay, I get it. Right. I know you mean that. And I get what you're saying. But what you have to understand is I want to hear all about that stuff. And it's not about you. It's about me, the taxpayer, right? I want to hear your stories. And that's how human beings are. And it's not just astronauts. We want to hear each other's stories. And when you tell your stories, you open up a space where other people feel safe to tell theirs.
I totally understand what you're saying, John. I'm in sales for many, many years. And I always look at folks who are actually really good at sales is that they're able to tell a story. Actually, I'll take it one back. I'm going to take it one back. Instead of maybe telling a story, they're able to kind of relive a story. Because I sold life insurance for many years.
Uh-huh.
And I found that telling people that they were going to pass away was not the best sales technique to get them to buy. But what I did find was that if I told a story about a client I ran into, my own father's story, my father passed away when I was 18 years old. I was there to try to save him. In the middle of the night, he woke up, and he was choking, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I came up and I tried to do the Heimlich on him, and I called 911. My mom was so nervous at that time that when we called 911, my mom didn't even know what number to dial. She just completely stopped. And I was trying to do CPR or, and when you're in that position, it's just so nerve wracking. And I realized that night my dad passed away in front of me in my hands. And when I tell people a story like that, I lived and I go through that reliving of it, I think people realize, like, you know what, they could be here today and be gone tomorrow. And I think those are so important when people are communicating. I invited so many people, anyone who's listening today on LinkedIn, you are, or Instagram or on Facebook or on YouTube. I mean, I think one of the things that we have to communicate stories to folks all the time whenever we're trying to communicate something and have them feel like they're part of it, like they're there. I mean, that's the thing all the time. When I hear a good story, I love it when they retell, like, what happened here, what happened,
Right.
This is what they said, this is what they like. If you're really good at doing that recreation or recreating, I think that's important. John, do you do any of that? Like I know you were doing a training coming up.
Oh boy, do we, Ben.
Next month. Can you talk a little bit about that? What you guys cover with your clients?
Yeah, well, let's talk about one of the most important stories I think anybody could ever identify and then craft and then deliver really well. And that's your origin story. And Ben, let's play with yours for a minute. Okay. If you tell me how this sounds to you. So I'm 18.
Yeah.
And it's the middle of the night and I hear something going on in my parents' room and it doesn't sound good. And I burst in and my dad is choking.
Yeah.
So I try to do the Heimlich maneuver on him. That's not working. Then he stops breathing and I feel, and his heart has stopped. So I start doing CPR. And meanwhile, my mom is so lost. She doesn't even remember how to dial 911. She's just freaking out.
Yeah.
Now, you see, we came to America as immigrants and my parents had nothing and they started a business or whatever they did and, got us to this point. But, my dad apparently had, a heart condition that we just didn't know about. And that night, as I did CPR and tried to keep him alive, he passed away in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
And, that started one of the biggest nightmares of my whole life. Coming to America had been tough, but trying to go on without dad was almost impossible. And he didn't have life insurance. And so when he left, there went all of the family's, ability to make money, to get the kids to school, to keep the roof over our heads. And I just never want that to happen to any other family if I can help it. And that's a true story. And that's the power of someone's origin story, because there's always this golden thread that goes all the way back through one's life. Like Mark started reporting the news when he was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever, right? He would write down what happened that day and then he'd go report it to his family. Like it, not everybody knows what they want to do like Mark did. Like you didn't necessarily know you were going to go sell life insurance for a long time, but we all have a thread that goes back. And when you identify that thread and you share that story in a powerful way, it's like rolling a red carpet out in front of yourself wherever you go, whether you're going to be on television, whether you're going to be on a podcast, whether you're going to be speaking on a TED or a TEDx stage, whether you're leading a group or you're leading a company. That origin story is it's their avenue to connect with you and to understand you a little bit better. And people want to know their leaders. They want to know the people that they're going to sit there and listen to, a 45-minute keynote from or whatever. And when you can share that origin story in a powerful way that means something to the audience, there is just nothing more powerful.
And if I can interject, Ben, for the audience at home, John didn't script that. That is his amazing power to find the origin story in all of us. We actually do this. We do a media training, public speaking, leadership communications boot camp a couple times a year. The next one is next month. John brings out, I hope you don't mind me saying, John, brings out this huge book. It's like this huge book. He's got a pen, right? And he walks up on stage and he's like, all right, who in the crowd doesn't know their origin story, right? And so somebody will come up and it's like magic, Ben, in front of you. He will pull these threads, right? Pull that string, get these facts that have been buried deep inside somebody. And in front of you, he weaves this amazing origin story. And I've seen him do it in person. It is magical. So for anyone at home saying, well, I don't know what my origin story is, well, get off the couch and come join us April 24th to the 27th in DC. And John will help you discover your origin story. It's amazing.
It's really fun and it's very fulfilling.
John and Mark, I guess part of the origin story is kind of pulling in the listener, and before they can listen to your message, maybe that's the question. Is the origin story help them understand who you are and it helps people trust you? Is that part of what the issue is?
Yeah, you know, Ben, it's funny you bring up a couple of my favorite terms. Like a lot of what I do is just repeating what I've heard other places, but I came up with two terms that I'm very proud of. One is insightful vulnerability. And when you can build some insightful vulnerability into your origin story and give people a look at you as a whole person, right? And some of the emotions that you felt as you went through that difficult period in your life that led you to do what you're doing now, or whatever the case may be. When you demonstrate that insightful vulnerability, you create emotional credibility. And that is absolutely what a well-chosen, well-crafted, well-told origin story does, is establishes your emotional credibility, which I think in most cases where you're speaking and you're already the leader, you've been invited to pitch, whatever, establishing your emotional credibility, I think, is even more important than establishing your credibility, because you already got the invite to speak there. You already got the invite to the meeting, whatever. Make sense? It's
interesting, John, because every time I've ever listened to a keynote speaker at any conference, the only thing I walk away honestly with when I leave and I remember long-term, like years later, is the origin story. Yeah. I don't really remember anything. I mean, I sat there and I listened to Magic Johnson once speak. And Magic told us about his story after he left the NBA, after he got HIV, and what he had to do. And he had to call, Dr. Jerry Buss because he was broke and he didn't know what he's going to do. And then he's like, well, give me a list of all the season ticket holders. And he's like, he would call every one of them. And then they would all make a meeting with him until he eventually found Charles Schultz, the owner of Starbucks. And then he made those connections. That's how he ended up owning all the Starbucks. But like the only thing I remember about that talk was his origin story. And that was the fascinating part. And it led to where he, today and then the Dodgers and, owning that and all that. And I think about that too. I think all of us have a story that we can thread that leads us to where we are today. And in the end, I think about all those things and it's so true, John.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's obvious with someone like Magic Johnson or the astronauts, but every human being has an inspiring, amazing origin story. They may just not be really in touch with it yet, but I have yet to meet a single person anywhere ever that doesn't have a really inspiring, awesome origin story once we look into it.
John, have you ever had anybody who's like really terrified of speaking? They're like, I need to go speak, but I'm terrified. Is there like something you help them overcome, like in their mindset, so that they can kind of overcome the terror?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that it makes sense that you'd be scared, right? Public speaking is dangerous. Getting noticed by the group is dangerous. What Mark did, being seen by millions of people every night, like that's dangerous. Look what happened to Jesus, Joan of Arc, Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Socrates, right? So if you're scared of public speaking, or if you're scared of getting on television or whatever, it makes sense. But here's the thing. you've got something that matters more to you than your fear. And when you take action in that circumstance, that is called courage. It's not about fearless. Fearless will get you killed. Fearless is stupid, but courage, that's really inspiring. So it goes back to that quote from Snoop Dogg. I got that same. So Snoop Dogg's quote is, "Don't be nervous, be at their service," right? Well, I got that same advice, but given very differently by one of the top leadership coaches anywhere in the world, Ben. Her name is Candace Shivers Morgan. I'm still in touch with her. She's awesome. And she said, John, if you get up on stage and you have your attention on yourself, then you have your attention on a minor ball of petty concerns that's of no real interest to anyone but you. Ouch. But if, however, you get up on stage and you have your attention on the audience and you've got your attention on the message and the difference that you're there to make and the difference those people will make in their lives because of it, now you've got your attention on something worth thinking about. Right? Don't be nervous, be at their service.
That is such a great, I'm going to remember that as I walk away. Every time I listen to Snoop, I'm thinking about that now from now on. I was going to ask Mark, you've been in front of millions of people, talking to people every night. Is there something that us as professional speakers, is there a tip that you can give us as speakers out there that maybe there's like a reporter trick that you do to kind of help your be better at ease? Because it's one thing to talk like this. I find that it's a hard time talking to a camera and a light goes on. It's like sometimes that's a challenge because there's no interaction. Is there a way that you go about that, Mark? Like, how do you talk to the nation knowing that there's people behind it, but you're really only talking to this box?
Sure. So let me answer that in two parts, if I may. First, talking to a camera. A camera doesn't care about your feelings. And a camera doesn't know if you had a good day or a bad day. When somebody turns that sucker on and the red light goes on, it is an inanimate object. It's going to be blinking at you no matter what. That means that you can project on that camera lens whatever you want. And so in journalism school, they tell us when you're looking at the camera, imagine in the lens one person, your mom, your dad, your sister, your best friend. Take one person, a loved one, someone really close to you, and imagine as if you are talking to them. That will do two things. One, you're not normally nervous talking to your mom unless you crash the family car, right? So normally that will put you at ease. And number two, it's a storytelling device, because if Mark Albert thinks he's Anchorman, he's going to talk one way. But if I'm relating what happened at the White House today or something that's happening in Nebraska, as if I'm telling it to my loved one, it'll be more conversational and easily understood. And so for looking at the camera, like right now, I'm not looking at you, Ben, or you, John, on the monitor. I'm looking right at the camera so people at home can see as if I'm looking at them. When you look at the camera, imagine you're talking to one person, not millions, one person, and just be yourself. Now, on a stage, and I'd love to hear John's feedback on this, on a stage, like, for example, at our live event coming up in April, Media Mastery Experts Live. Ben, we're so thrilled you're going to be there. When I'm looking at a crowd, for example, I'm not looking over the crowd, and I'm not even looking at the crowd. I'm looking at the people. Now, does that make sense? I'm not looking at the crowd as a whole. I'm looking at the individual people. I want to look into your eyes. I want to see if you're understanding what I'm saying, if what I'm communicating is clear, and it gives me a heads up as to, does the crowd have questions? Am I not explaining it well? But I look at individual people, and that also is a trick because it makes the person look up from their cell phone, right? And pay attention to you because, oh, Mark's going to look at me. Mark's coming back to, I better listen to him, right? I better pay attention because I know Mark is looking at every single person. And so I use that as a speaking device. One, it helps me connect to the people and make sure that my concepts when I teach are understood, but also it kind of keeps the people accountable because they know that me as the speaker, I'm so into their well-being that I'm going to be checking up on them. And, they better be aware that I'm going to look back at them. So that's kind of how I do it for the camera and for when I speak to crowds.
I do the same thing. Mark, you gave away my secret. I used to speak every week because I had to teach insurance. And when I was in a crowd, sometimes I'd be in a larger crowd, and I realized what I did in a smaller crowd of 20, I could do in an audience of 1,000. Like, for example, I always knew, like, you didn't want to just talk to one person because it looked like you're just talking to one person, one side, but there was always the left. I always said this was my rule when I went up. I would try to find 3 people, one on the left, one in the middle, one on the right. And I would talk to those 3 people, but it looked like I'm talking their direction, but I was talking to 3 people. And then sometimes people would ask me, like, how do you know which 3 people? And I go, it's energy. I'm looking at that audience and I'm looking who's staring right at me. And if they're intent, you're my man or you're my woman. And I'm like literally talking to those 3 people literally the entire time. Maybe I'll pick up 4 or 5 if I can capture someone else, but it's like literally energy. And if they're into it, I'm into it. And I get more into it when they're into it. So it's easier for me actually to talk in front of an audience than the camera, Mark.
Hey, Ben, by the way, I just noticed, I hope you don't mind. I just was noticing in the comments, there's a question for John about this very thing.
John, they asked John, how did you do this in front of, oh, wow. How did you do this? How did you do that in front of 700,000 people in India?
Well, thanks, Ray. I obviously I couldn't see all 750,000 of them, but I really did my darndest because there was this gigantic tent that we were under, and there were just, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people under that tent. And I would, I looked at the people that were close and I made eye contact with them as I was speaking. And then I looked to the back and I looked at the furthest back point I could in that, in that sea of people. And I made eye contact in my mind with someone back there. And then I looked up here and, Ben, just to give you the ninja tip on what you were doing, how's this? This is something I was taught a while ago. Find those people that are really lit up, like those 3 people you're talking about, right? And go to them and get good energy, but then find that place in the room that looks a little dark and not as interested and pour that good energy out on them, and then go pick it up again from one of the people that's lit up and then pour it into a person that's not as lit up. And that's a way that I stay engaged when I'm doing my training and make sure that I don't ignore the people that don't seem as lit up. Right. But in India, I just did my best to connect with the number of people that I could see, which was pretty huge anyway. And, when you're in an audience that's that big, to look to the back left corner of the venue and make eye contact, you can't really see their eyes very well because they're so far away. But I look as if I am looking someone in the eye right now, and I'll smile at them and whatever, and then I'll scan across to the other side. But to practice that, I had practiced that for years before I got to India. And, it was kind of nerve-wracking to be in front of 700,000 people, but that was what I was trying to do to answer that question.
I haven't even gotten to this part yet. John, you have worked with the TEDx folks for a number of years. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how that kind of came about? And then, and in terms of what do you teach those TEDx speakers so that they can kind of get it down? Because it's easier to just go on and ramble on. I'm trying to bring it down to 7 or 8 minutes. That's the tough part there. What are some of the tips or techniques that you did or learned with those groups?
Well, I got involved with the TED and TEDx community I went to TED for the first time in 2009 and got really inspired and got very into the TED and TEDx community. And by now I've coached for about 35 plus different TEDx events. I coach for the TED Fellows program, pro bono. I've coached a number of speakers who've spoken on the main TED stage. I did not coach Brene Brown or Simon Sinek, but I think there are a few really big things about the TED format. And the first thing is that I think we give Ted credit for bringing it back, but this is the format that has always worked with human beings, right? We got a little fascinated when radio showed up and television and movies, and we could do all this stuff. But for 500,000 years before that, basically it was the TED format that got things done. One person got up, had an idea, said it to the group. The more articulate they were and the better the idea was, the more likely it was that it would happen. I mean, that's what we're primed for, is being in person, hearing these people speak to us one-on-one, like one person speaking. So I think that bringing it back to some of those fundamentals of the neurobiology and the evolutionary biology of communication is huge, and it works everywhere. But one of the big things that Mark and I saw that we had in common here when we first started working together is that when you're going to be on television, if you're going to be interviewed in the press, when you're getting on a TED stage, you got to be really succinct, right? You have to be super clear. You can't just ramble on. And it's very easy to make something complicated more complicated. But the trick is to make something complicated simple and clear. And so, that's one of those synergies between what Mark teaches people and what I teach people, and what Mark teaches people and what I teach people. So in the TED world, I think the most salient piece of coaching is, what is your one idea we're spreading? Not your top 3 or your best 5 or the 18 things to do to be a successful leader. No, what is, out of all the stuff you could tell us, if you boiled it down for us to something that you thought would matter to us, what would be your one idea we're spreading? And then how do we deliver that idea in the most potent, powerful, emotionally connected, memorable, meaningful way in a really short time frame?
How did they decide it was 7 minutes or 8 minutes? What's the exact amount of time you're supposed to do this?
It's a good question. There are several different lengths. Like the longest TED Talk ever is supposed to be 18 minutes. And once in a while people go over by a minute or whatever, but it's 18 minutes. Then I think there's another, and then I'm not really sure what all the other exact breakdowns are, but it's like 18 minutes, 12 minutes. There are even some TED Talks that are 3 or 4 minutes long. Like one of the most interesting TED Talks is a 3-minute talk about how to tie your shoes. You can go Google it, and it's really, really interesting. And for a lot of people, it is a massive paradigm shift in how they tie their shoes. But it's one idea, right?
John, it takes me half that time just to do my origin story.
Well, we can work on that, Ben. We can work on that, because there are times when that origin story, kind of the longer, more fun, more journey, like the whole point is the origin story. That's fine. But then there are other times when you got to get that origin story out in 2.5, maybe 3 minutes. And then there are even times when you have less time. And so, when we work with people, we're pushing them to have like kind of the longer fun version, then the 2.5 to 3 minute workhorse version. And then even the very succinct, I'm on television, answering questions as succinctly as possible version.
Let's talk about succinct for a second. Mark, that's your realm there. We hear the term soundbite all the time. And I've heard it from you, like we need to be able to tell or pitch our elevator pitch like in a soundbite. Mark, can you explain what is a soundbite and what are some of the things that maybe we get wrong when we tell our elevator pitch?
Sure. And so let me just ask you this. When were you ever on an elevator for 3 minutes? Never. Never. Why do people think you get a 3-minute elevator pitch? Like, where did that come from? Or a 2-minute or a 1 minute? I've never been on an elevator for 3. I mean, maybe if you go to the what's the what's the tallest building? Yeah, thank you. I mean, maybe that's 90 seconds. Yeah. You don't get 2 minutes or 3 minutes for an elevator pitch, people. You get like 20 seconds. And so when we teach people about how to craft a soundbite when you're going to be interviewed for the news media, it's all about Well, first, what's your expertise? And then it's what's your message, right? And then what is it, the point in this one soundbite? If they interview you for 10 minutes and they only use one soundbite, how are you crafting that so that your message, your expertise, all of it shines through? And as far as the timing goes, if you watch any soundbite on television, I'm not talking about a news magazine program like 60 Minutes or Dateline, but a regular news program, it's like 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 15 seconds max. If you pick up any newspaper, so here's this, I'll cover my address. So if you pick up the newspaper today and you read any quote in here, it's going to be like 10 or 12 or 15 seconds if you were to read it out loud. And so the real trick, the secret, is that you are boiling down your message. John and I lead a community, a group coaching community called Media Mastery Experts. And we coach people twice a week in these group coaching calls, and there's video modules and stuff. We were just working last night in our Monday office hours with someone crafting her soundbite. She's a healthcare professional, and she was wanting to convey this particular topic, and we were whittling it down and recrafting it, and then taking that soundbite. How would you post it on LinkedIn? And so it is an art. It is a trick. That's what we work with people on. But it's very, very key that you don't go into an interview without knowing what your possible sound bites could be. And that's why it's super important that you do that work. And whether it's the origin story or it's the sound bites, we do it all at our events. And I see Lynn B here in the chat has talked about if we have free trainings. Absolutely. We'd love to see you, Lynn, at our April 2nd free masterclass. That is a week from today, mediamasteryexperts.com/masterclass. I put it in the chat, mediamasteryexperts.com/masterclass. We'd love to have you.
Mark, can you explain a little bit about the event itself? I mean, it's not just like you're sitting in a room, like traditionally you're just listening. Like you have like a podcast, you have like a studio set up and everything. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
John and I are not fans of just listening to us talk. John and I are fans of an immersive experience that will give you what you need to make a difference. And so, yes, we are teaching about his origin story. You're going to watch him do it with somebody who maybe has never had an origin story. He's going to open up his big book and he is going to find out that origin story without ever having to talk to this person about it before, live on stage. Yes, we're going to do a workshop about sound bites. Yes, we're going to do a workshop about how to ace an interview, how to pitch a journalist. We're going to do all that. But you are going to take what you learn and you are going to put it into practice immediately on camera. So we use a TV studio across from the White House, and everybody does 5 rotating stations. We call it our round robin. Everyone does an on-camera, on-set TV interview with me, 25-year journalist. Everyone then goes next door and does an on-camera podcast interview with our host who's been in public radio for 20 years. Then everyone goes to our stage with the John Bates, the TEDx coach to the stars. He will coach you on stage. This is all recorded with multiple cameras. You get all of that video. For our VIPs, we'll edit it into a demo reel that you can use when you send it to journalists. You can send it to speakers, etc. And then the 4th station is our branded headshots. We're flying in professional photographers to give you new headshots. And the 5th station, you will meet with a top voice badge person on LinkedIn. This is invite only. LinkedIn has to grant you this badge that you're a top voice on LinkedIn. She does workshops around the world, how to post, best procedures for LinkedIn, how to get the top voice badge, all this. She's going to optimize your LinkedIn profile, not for a job, not for a client, but to be seen as a thought leader and as an expert in your industry. And so you're going to walk away with elements you can use right now. We just talked to an author last night, actually, John and I. His book is coming out later this year. We're going to talk about his book in our TV and podcast interview as if it has just come out. Why? So he then has those video elements to post on social media, paid media, owned media, earned media, when the book does come out later this year. We'd love to have everyone join us in DC. This isn't 700,000 people in India, right? We are capping this at under 40 people to make sure that it is immersive and engaging. We would love to have you. And that's at MediaMasteryExperts.com. MediaMasteryExperts.com. Click on live event, and we'd love to see you there. And Ben, you have a special promo code. If anybody uses the word Ben, you get a special amount off of our live event.
That's awesome.
And Ben, I've been in this world for a long time, and I've seen a lot of these events where people can come and kind of generate a speaker reel and all that kind of stuff. This event, we've done it once before, same places that we're going to be doing it. It is absolutely top notch. Like, this is so much better than anything I've ever seen before. It's a real TV studio. Like, this is a studio that international broadcast studios use all the time because it's right by the White House. And this is a podcast voice that people will recognize. Interviewing you in a video podcast, we'll get you on stage, and I'll make sure that you look good and sound good. And then when people go to apply for things like TEDx events, or when they're applying as a keynote speaker, or they want to, present a paper at something, or they want to go establish themselves as an expert and create a relationship with maybe their local television station so that they can call them when they need comments from an expert in their field. You've got this stuff to show someone, and that puts you so much further ahead of just about anybody else out there. And a lot of the people out there are going to have just stuff like this that's not as good as yours. So I know we've been talking about earlier, all the people who are afraid to talk. I want to talk right now to the people who actually love to talk. If you've decided you want to be a professional speaker in your life, if you decided that you're going to have to be in front of people all the time and you just want to be better at it, if you want to get on the media, I mean, we have Mark here who's worked in media and been a reporter in front of the camera for 25 plus years. He's going to talk about the things in this session, which is like how to get in front of a reporter, how to get them to quote you as an expert, and how to be able to do that. And Mark, it's like, you don't pay to get on, be written about by these reporters, do you? Mark, tell them your saying, the one that I love so much, every day in America, right?
So every day in America, in every newsroom in America, journalists are looking for experts. You know what else is happening every day in America? Experts are looking for journalists. We bring the two together. If you have someone come to you and say, for $2,000, we'll quote you in the top 50, whatever in your industry. Or someone says, hey, we'll print an article in our publication if you pay us $500, run. That is not earned media. That is paid media. And any journalist or somebody booking a speaking gig is going to know it. You want the holy grail, which is earned media. It's media you cannot buy. You have to earn it through the value of your expertise. We teach people how to get the holy grail of media, earned media. Remember I was telling you about the newspaper? You can't pay to get yourself here. You can't pay to get quoted in any of these articles. You have to appear in these articles, earn media, because of the value of your expertise. We teach you how to hone your expertise, how to craft your messaging. We give you a template of exactly how to pitch a journalist, and then we help you to do it and give you those elements on camera so that when a journalist says, I want to put you on the Today Show, but have you ever been on TV? How do I know you're not going to choke? All right. You're going to give them the video with me, a 25-year journalist, Peabody Emmy Award winner. That also includes coaching by the John Bates, TEDx Coach to the Stars. And they'll be like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're great. Can you be here at 7 a.m. tomorrow?
That's right. And we've had that work, for a number of our students, people who've done our course.
In fact, Ben, if anybody watching right now goes to sign up for our April 2nd masterclass, MediaMasteryExperts.com/masterclass, you'll hear about Atlas Altman. Atlas Altman served his country in Iraq, served his country in Afghanistan, 2 Bronze Stars, and served in the National Security Council in the White House. After he left government service, he contacted media organizations in his area and said, hey, I'm here if you need an expert. Nobody called him until he came to us. And we taught him what to do. Within 8 minutes of me, with my first meeting with him, I had somebody at a local station contacting and reaching out. He was on the news that night, comes to our event. On the flight home, he's walking through the airport. He's texting and emailing journalists with the tools we taught him. He was on TV twice the next day, 2 different TV stations. That's the power when you know the method and the process. Just like any of your industries at home, you're the expert in your industry. We're the expert when it comes to speaking and getting earned media. Let us help you get your expertise out there. Be the go-to expert for your industry that journalists and bookers for speaking engagements are calling. We'd love to help you.
John, I wanted to also, because, I think people have asked me, like, what is my end goal with my business? I'm like, I'd love to just be a professional speaker and speak. Michael, John, can you speak to that for a second? Like, is being a professional speaker a viable career move to do, long term, or is it more something like part-time that people do?
Well, I'm working right now. A guy hired me who has been in the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame multiple times. And he hired me recently to work with him so that he could make his $25,000 keynote into a $50,000 keynote. Sounds pretty viable to me, and it really depends, right? Like it's not, look, if it was super easy, everybody do it, right? But if you are able and willing to get up in front of a group of human beings, even though it's super scary, and talk about something valuable, you're ahead of, 90% of the people on the planet already or more, right? So then when you get really good at that, the world's your oyster. And here's one of the big mistakes that I see people make and that I saw myself make. But luckily I got corrected early. You don't need to create a new speech for every new audience, right? There's a saying that it's much easier to find a new audience than it is to create a new speech. And the people that are super successful, and this is not just me saying it, this is Michael Port, this is Mike McKelowitz, this is all kinds of people in the speaker industry would agree with me, that the people that are the most successful are not the people who have multiple, all kinds of different speeches. They're the people who have one speech that is so good that every time they give it, 2 or 3 people come up afterwards and say, gee, will you give that exact same speech to my group? We need to hear that exact same speech, right? So it's much more about having what Michael Port calls a referable speech, one really good speech. And yes, you can modify it a little bit, but one thing that is just so clearly well done and well crafted that people cannot help themselves, they just come up afterwards and say, you got to come give that to my group. Like, what are your fees? So that's one of the big pieces that can save people a lot of time, I think, is knowing it's not about a bunch of speeches. It's about that one really good speech. And then, which leads, and this may sound a little self-serving, but it's also true. When you go out, if you go out with a not so good speech, you are anti-referring yourself, So to go out and start out with a really, really good speech and then keep iterating it and making it better, that's, I think, a much quicker, more direct path to succeeding as a speaker than doing one-offs all the time.
I think you made me think right now, John, about something I heard I was at TravelCon, and there was Pat Flynn. He's like a very well-known YouTuber that has gone viral, and sometimes he's like one post of his has $80,000 on one post. Yeah. And I was listening to him, and he said it didn't start that way. He said he made a video, it did well. He saw the match. He said what part really of that video did well. He's like, I need to replicate that. So he reiterates that. Yeah. And he basically came out with like 10 versions of it. And every time it just got a little bit, he refined it to the point where he made like $80,000 on one post.
Yeah, that's how you do it, you know. And when people come to the masterclass that we're doing, which, you know, MediaMasteryExperts.com/masterclass, I am going to make sure that you take away a script of how to talk to people when they call you to speak for their organization. You will walk away from that masterclass, if you get nothing else out of it, which you will definitely get a lot more, but you will get a script that will turbocharge your success as a speaker. And it starts like this. Oh yeah, why I'd love to speak to your group. Do you have a budget? Right. And then there's a whole script that comes after it that just transformed my speaking business.
That's awesome. Mark, does your code 33777 still work? Is that still valid?
It does. Yep. We use that. And when you text us, we'll send it back.
Let me see if I can run that right at the bottom here. Guys, I'll see that.
Yep. And when you text that number, you get that tip sheet, and you also get a promo code for our event. So awesome. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. Awesome. Mark, this is fantastic tips. John, this has got to be one of the best LinkedIn live sessions out there in the market. I hope this thing goes viral. Everybody hears about how they can become a better speaker, and how these are fantastic tips, not only from a veteran reporter on television, but also a trainer for the TEDx speakers. I mean, this is the best duo out there, folks. If you haven't thought about ever visiting the White House and going to see Washington, D.C., and then at that same time, you got to come out on, especially only on April 24th to April 27th, come join the Media Mastery Experts. It's going to be a fantastic session. You're going to meet Mark live in person. John is going to coach you, and he brought some great folks to help you on podcasting, being on camera, how to work on your elevator pitch. I'm so excited to be joining you folks there as well, and I love to meet you folks as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It has been a fantastic session. Mark, John, is there anything else you want to leave before we wrap up?
I want to say one quick thing. Our hotel room block expires at the end of this month. So if you're thinking about registering, that could put a little fire under your butt if you need a hotel, because hotels are pretty expensive if you have to buy outside of our room block, because the blossoms are out, the cherry blossoms, right? So it is going to be not only super fun, not only super valuable for you and your career and establishing yourself as a media master, but also it's just going to be freaking incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, so well said, John. And, you know, I see, Lynn, you've signed up for the April 2nd Masterclass. Thank you. Linda, you're referring your son to the April 2nd Masterclass. I'll tell you what, if you are super interested in the event, just like John says, our hotel room block expires in less than a week, Monday, March 31st. Email me directly so that I can get you the event, so we can talk to you if you want. Use the promo code Ben. Maybe we have something a little bit better for you. You want to get it in by Monday. So don't wait. We're capped at a certain number of people. So if you want to go, you want to get that discounted rate. It's a steal, because the hotels in downtown are like $500 right now for the cherry blossoms. So just really incredible. We'd love to have you at the event. And Ben, thank you for hosting us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, folks. Forget about going to Japan for cherry blossom. You can come to DC for that.
And if you go to Japan to get the cherry blossoms, you won't walk away with an on-camera interview, an on-podcast interview, an on-stage recording, and all that stuff.
And headshots. And, you know, like, Ben, you're going to be there, right?
I will be, too.
So, like, I mean,
also,
hey,
travel tips, everybody. If you guys want travel tips, come talk to me.
Yeah, right. Like, how cool is that? Like, that's worth coming just by itself. You get to meet Ben in person.
There you go. Mark will give me 5 minutes. I can give everybody 10 travel tips before they get home.
Yeah, we'll do that. I think that would be fun.
Ben's big deal.
There you go. There you go, folks. I'm so happy. Thank you, folks, for joining us today. Mark, John, thank you again. I will see you folks real soon next month.
See you next month, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.